Hello, everyone. It is 1 o'clock on Monday, and we will wait just a minute to see who appears here. Lord knows, I hope I'm on the right page. There we go. Hello, 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 everybody. Hello, Debbie. All righty, good to see you all. Welcome. It's LA Lakers Day today. I don't know when the NBA is coming back. Hopefully, we will have a season next next NBA season. But welcome to Break Time with Pastor V. And if you're joining us, please make sure you say hello and where you're watching from, your location. And let's see what I have going on here. And I also want to thank those of you who've been consistently watching Break Time with Pastor V and 1 o'clock, Monday through Friday. My hope is that you leave each day encouraged by the Spirit of God. And if you're new and you've missed any of the previous episodes of the last couple of weeks, I want to encourage you to go back and to watch them. I'm sure you will be blessed. You will be encouraged. I see you, Denisha says, I'm watching from my couch. Okay. How about you guys just tell us what city you're in? I see you, Belinda, from Westmont. Hey, CEO Jay, welcome home from Morehouse, bro. Yep, it's a long summer for you, kind of, or you guys still doing class. We'll talk soon. But anyway, so I want to welcome you to, hey, Jessica, to the Break Time with Pastor V. And today's subject, we're going to talk about ginkgo biloba. Ginkgo biloba. And we're going to look at Psalm 77. Does anybody know what ginkgo biloba is? Go ahead, let us know. Let's see what you have in the comments section if you know what ginkgo biloba is. I'll tell you a story while you're doing that. A number of years ago, almost 30 years, well, actually was about, almost 30 years ago, I stopped at a store called Thrifty's, which is now Rite Aid, and I ran into my dad there, and he was wandering around, and he was in the store. He had some things in his hand, and I said, hey, good to see you. He says, hey. And I said, our conversation went on, and he said, I came to get something to help me, but I can't remember the name of it. And yes, you got it, Don. It helps with brain memory. So ginkgo biloba is an herb that helps with brain memory. So my dad had gone to the store, and we got there to get it, but he couldn't remember what he had come to get. I just thought that was kind of humorous, because what he was looking for was ginkgo biloba to help you with your memory. Yes, Janisha, memory assistance. And so today we're going to talk about ginkgo biloba, but we're going to talk about it and seeing it in the light of Psalm 77. I'm going to read the psalm for you in the NIV version. It says, I cried out to God for help. I cried out to God to hear me. When I was in distress, I sought the Lord. At night, I stretched out untiring hands, and I would not be comforted. I remembered you, God. I groaned, I meditated, and my spirit grew faint. You kept my eyes from closing. I was too troubled to speak. I thought about former days. The years of long ago. I remembered my songs in the night. My heart meditated, and my spirit asked, will the Lord reject forever? Will he never show his favor again? His unfailing love vanished forever. Will his promise fail for all time? Has God forgotten the merciful? Has he in his anger withheld compassion? Then I thought, to this I will appeal. The years when the Most High stretched out his right hand. I will remember the deeds of the Lord. Yes, I will remember your miracles of long ago. I will consider all your ways and meditate on all your mighty deeds. Your ways, God, are holy. What God is as great as our God? You are God who performs miracles. You display your power among the peoples. With your mighty hand, you redeemed your people, the descendants of Joseph. The waters saw you, God, the waters saw you and withered. The very depths were convulsed. The clouds poured down the water. And there we go. So that's Psalm 77. And thanks for joining us. I see you, Sister Lydia. If you're just joining in, please make sure you say hello and let us know where you're watching from. You have joined Break Time with Pastor V, and I am so glad you are here this Monday as we are going to talk about the subject of ginkgo biloba and looking at Psalm 77. And here in Psalm 77, I noticed a pattern that was happening. In the first verse, he says, I cried unto God, and he heard me. But then there was a problem in verse 2 through 4. He says, hey, I sought God, but I couldn't hear him. I sought God. I couldn't sleep. I was discouraged. Seems like the more I sought him, the more my spirit fainted within me. In fact, there were no words. I couldn't even speak anymore. And here's a question for you. Have you ever been in this position? That's a real question. Have you ever been to the point where you felt like you were seeking God, and then he couldn't hear you? And here's the problem is that we often testify of the results of what God has done, but we rarely hear the details of the process. So we're discouraged when we're seeking God and it seems like he's not listening or he's not hearing. And because we feel that if anybody can, God can, and it's not supposed to be like this. I mean, don't they always say that God never fails? And yet we feel like he's failing us, but we're too ashamed, or I don't know if we'll call it a shame, but because we've never heard anybody else mention it, we feel like we're the only ones that are going through it at that time. But that's where David was. And so here's kind of, if you want to title this something other than ginkgo biloba, we'll title it What to Do in Dark Places. Okay, ginkgo biloba, what to do in dark places. The first thing that we have to do is admit where we are. Admit that God, hey, I'm listening, I'm praying, but you don't seem to hear me. You just don't seem to hear me. The next thing that David does is in verses, I think I've skipped something here. First, he cried out to God. Secondly, he sought God. But in his seeking God, he didn't receive a response. He didn't feel like God was hearing him. And so what we want to do is first, we seek God, and then secondly, admit to where we are. And then the third thing he says, but I remembered. In verses 5 through 9, he's remembered the former days. It's as if he took his ginkgo biloba pill to help him with his memory. And so as he remembered the former days, let's look at what he says. He says, I remembered in my past dark times. So that he had been through dark times before. And I asked, have you ever been through a dark time? Has God brought you out of a dark time? And so when he's doing that, he says, I remembered my dark times, and this is what I did. His spirit began to ask some deep questions. He said, hey, will the Lord reject me forever? The inherent answer is no, because he's remembering his dark times. So if he's been in a dark time in the past, he's come out of that, and he finds himself now in a dark time, maybe even a darker time. But he says, will the Lord reject me forever? The answer is no. Will he never show favor again? What's the inherent answer? No. That is not, will he ever show favor again? The answer is yes. He's not committed to being in that position where he'll never show favor again. Has his promise failed? The answer, no. And I love this one. He says, has his unfailing love vanished forever? The answer is no. But what I love about it is because he uses the word unfailing love, but he's questioning, has it gone away? Well, what is unfailing? Never ending. It means it's always consistent. But because he's in this dark place, so the first thing that we have to recognize is that we get in dark places sometimes. I don't care, y'all. Don't let people tell you that the saints never get depressed. The saints never have dark times. Sometimes life will put you in a very, very dark place and you're crying out to God, but it seems like he doesn't hear you. And that's where the writer of this psalm was. He didn't feel that God was hearing. So he begins to rehearse and remember and asking himself some questions about that. So you have to, the second thing you can do is ask yourself, has he brought me through before? And then he changes his whole strategy as Ginkgo biloba kicked into a whole nother level. He begins by looking at the character of God. And he says, first of all, your ways are holy. There's no God that can compare to you. You perform miracles. You demonstrated your power among the people of God. And so what does he do? He looks at the characteristics of God. I got a question for you. What's the most endearing characteristic of God that comes to your mind? Is it his holiness? Is it his grace? Is it forgiveness? Is it because he goes into dark places with you? Go ahead. I'll give you a couple seconds. Put your comment in there. What's his most endearing characteristic to you? Another thing that we do when we're in dark times is to recall the character of God. Somebody's responded, Don, I see you. His safety, his grace, his mercy, Sister Janisha. Yes, his forgiveness. And so we have to rehearse those things in our mind sometimes to remind ourselves when we're in those dark places of just who it is. I see you, CEOJ, of who it is that we're dealing with. And then the next thing that the writer does is he recalls some specific things that God has done. He says, you've delivered the descendants of Jacob and of Joseph. And so another thing that we can do when we're in dark places, you can't seem to find God, is you remember his character, you admit to where you are, and then thirdly, celebrate the victories or what he's done in the lives of others. Because right now it might not feel like he's done anything in yours or that he's able to. So look at what he does. Look at the imagery here in the last few verses. He says, the waters saw you and withered. It means the waters saw you and dried up. He's talking about how God has brought the children of Israel out. And he says the depths were convulsed. So they became shadow. And then he concluded by this whole thing by saying God's path may be difficult. Check this out, verse 19 and 20, and then we're going to end this. He says, your path led through the sea, your way through the mighty waters. Though your footprints were not seen, you led the people like a flock by the hand of Moses and Aaron. Check this out. There are those who say that saints and Christians never should go into difficult times, but it's not true. Look at verse 19. It says that your path led through the sea and through the mighty waters, though your footprints were not seen. Wow. And so there are times in life where God takes us, we are still on the path of God, even though you're at the edge of the sea. You got to remember, when they got to the Red Sea, he's talking about, that's the reference there. There was nowhere to go. The sea was before them, and Pharaoh's army was behind them. Absolutely nowhere to go. And so, but God, by the hand of Moses, led them through. And I love the imagery here. It said, because I've always thought, Moses put his hand out and the waters just stopped. The wind blew, it says, and it dried up and they walked on dry land. But here there's some more vivid imagery. And it says that when the waters saw you, they dried up. It was at your presence, and that you've made it shallow. You made the path become hard and shallow so that the people can walk on it. And then it says that you led your people like a flock. Here we are, the good shepherd there. He leads his people and he'll send help. He ordained for Moses. He ordained for Aaron So the last quality that I want you to remember is that sometimes, I'm going to give you two. Sometimes God leads you through some difficult times. And just because you're in a difficult time doesn't mean that God's not there. Difficulty does not mean you're in the wrong place, but it simply is an opportunity for God to show you his favor in the middle of difficult times. The last thing I'm going to leave you, because I just saw this, it says that he led them by the hand of Moses and Aaron. Listen, y'all, God's calling us to be involved in the lives of our brothers and sisters to help them out. Can't live in shame, and we can't shame other folk. The truth is, if we gave testimonies of the process and not just the product at the end, that people would be encouraged, that they would understand that, hey, I am not by myself, that God has other people there. So God bless you. Make sure you take your ginkgo biloba, that is your ability to remember what God has done for you in the past in dark places. So as you do that, you will remember the character of God. You will rehearse what he's done in others and his path and his victories that he has for you. And remember that God is there in the dark time. And the first thing you got to admit, and admit it out loud, I'm in a dark place. And God, it doesn't seem like you're there. God ain't scared of you. God's not going to change because you saying, God, I don't feel like you're here. Trust me, he won't. So just be real with God. And as we're real with God, we'll see his deliverance. We'll celebrate him bringing us through some very dark places into the light. And he's going to use other people to do it. And when you can't remember what he's done for you, celebrate what he's done for others. And so if you've been in a dark time and God's brought you through some things, hey, do me a favor, let us know about it. I just want to celebrate with you of what God has done in your life. Hey, Verbon, thank you for joining us. And so as we conclude, there's one other thing I have for you. Oh, you know what? I'm going to tell you the story. No, I'm going to do this first. Hey, we need your help, and I needed something by Wednesday. Now, I don't know how to write backwards, so this is going to appear backwards, but we're looking for some testimonies, and you're simply saying this. We're going to use them for our Easter presentation, but it's where you do the little flash thing. Now, this says, because he lives. Now, it may appear backwards on your side because cameras tend to flip things over. But it says, because if you can make a video of yourself, and it won't appear backwards in your video, because he lives, and maybe give us two things. I think this one says, I am free. And then, that one says nothing. And then, it still says I am free, huh? Hold on. Hey. Well, I thought I wrote another one. Sorry. So because he lives, then you can say I am free or I have victory. You can do it as a couple. You can do it as a family. Go ahead and make that video and shoot it to us. You can email it to ZTCC, that's as for Zion Temple Community Church, ztccpower@gmail.com. And finally, the real finally, I made myself some tea. And I have this little mug here. You see this? About a month or two ago, my daughter and I were having a Father-Daughter Day. It was in February because we went to celebrate Black History at the Long Beach Aquarium, and we couldn't get in, so we ended up going to, I think it's called Color Me Mine. You do these things. So I made this little mug, and as you can see, I am not the artisan. And it was supposed to have a baseball right here, but I got really frustrated. And believe it or not, these were stencils that I couldn't follow. And so it still came out messy. But inside of me, I'm a perfectionist. And so I got really frustrated because the paintbrush kept leaving all these lines on it. And it was just really, really sloppy. And the more I tried to smooth it out, the more it was a mess. It was ugly, and I had paid for it. So I'm trying to have a good time with my daughter, but I'm frustrated on the inside because what I'm doing isn't working. So we turned the mugs in, and I said, you know what, Lisa, you don't even have to go back and get it because it's ugly. I couldn't get the lines out. I was done. I had concluded that it wasn't worth it. It wasn't worth coming back to get it. She teaches at a dance school nearby in Palos Verdes. So she went to get it and she brought it home. And she said, hey, it came out pretty good. Now, first thing I noticed that all the lines were gone. It was smooth. You couldn't see any evidence of the lines there. You know why? Because it had been put through the kiln. It had heat applied to it. And the heat blended it and glazed it. And there is no evidence, unless I told you the story, that there were ever lines in it. So what I thought was invaluable was actually valuable. Oftentimes, listen, because there are lines in your life and because you're in difficult places, don't conclude that you're not valuable. Don't conclude that others are not valuable because they're in dark places. God's using the heat to create a product that's worthy of his glory and to serve him. So, a little long today. Have a great day. God bless you. Robert, I see you, buddy. Lord bless you all. Have a good day, and I'll see you tomorrow at Break Time with Pastor V at 1 p.m. Deuces.